Hello and welcome to our insurance special. CNBC TV 18 in partnership with ICICI Prudential Life Insurance launches a new initiative called Mission Insure India, Insurance for All. I'm Mangla Malu. With me is Sumaira Abdi, who will join me shortly. As part of the Mission Insure India, we celebrate the 15th of every month as Protection Day, a day dedicated to inculcate the thought of protecting you and your family's future. Before we get ahead with answering all your insurance-related queries, we take a look at the markets. It's a down day for the Nifty as well as the Sensex. The mid-cap index sitting with a cut of almost a fourth of a percent, and we have the Nifty Bank, which is lower by about 200 points as well. What are the stocks which are taking the markets lower? Well, it's been the leveraged plays as well as banks. So in leveraged plays from the frontline space, we have Z Entertainment, which is not doing too well, down almost 6%. And from the banks, we have IndusInd Bank lower, we have Axis Bank, which has taken a sharp knock, and in just the last few minutes we have Indiabulls Housing Finance also moving off the highs in the lower end of today's trading range. So Axis Bank at the low point of the day, and IndusInd Bank, remember, interestingly, we had the management join us today and say that they're confident that credit costs will not increase beyond 60 basis points in the next year, and their non-investment grade book does not exceed 6% of their overall book size, but the street has none of it. In just the last two trading sessions, the stock has lost in excess of 10%, and as IndusInd Bank is going lower, we have Bharat Financial as well, which goes lower in today's trading session following the move that we've seen in IndusInd Bank. But first up, all the top stories, and then we get cracking on answering your investment related queries. Financials and Reliance continue to bear down on the market. Key indices near the lows of the day, lose close to 0.5%. The mid-cap index too under pressure. The IndusInd Bank stock fails to take heart from the management commentary that they are not seeing any stress in the NBFC book. Shares of NBFCs like Indiabulls Housing Finance, THFL and Reliance Cap, all of them trade under pressure. Pharmaceutical stocks too under pressure on regulatory concerns. Sun and Olu Pharma lead the charge lower. Crew Finance takes a knock after 4% equity changes hands in multiple large trades. Sources say HDFC has sold stake to meet SEBI's promoter shareholding norms. US Secretary of Commerce Wilbur Ross says India's applied tariff at 13% is one of the highest in the world as he pitches for a significant duty cut, adds that the Trump administration withdrew GSP benefits as India was not providing equitable market access. All right, with that we move on. Joining us today we have Harsh Rungta of harshroongta.com to discuss the importance of health insurance policies, risk premiums and more. Thanks a lot, Harshvardhan, for joining in. You know, I was looking at a lot of the queries that were coming in with regards to health insurance. The one that I want to understand is that, you know, what can I do if the insurance company is still not offering me a cover?
So that would really depend on why that cover is not being offered. Typically, I think if you have one of these, what the insurance companies call the big five, I mean, whether cancer, stroke, organ failure and such like, if you have those kind of diseases already, then you know, to get a health insurance policy would be difficult, and I think that is reasonable, because if you already have those diseases, then the chances of claim are so high that if your premiums are given as per normal, your claims would actually weigh on the premiums paid by other people. So I think clearly, if that is the reason you are not getting insurance, today there is no real solution. But in India, even if you don't have any of those serious diseases, but if you are, say, 60 plus, you will still find it difficult to get insurance, and even if you do get it, you might get it at a very expensive rate. So that is just the reality of India. There is no regulatory requirement that health insurance is a right and it needs to be given. That does not exist in India.
All right, I understand that point. In fact, recently we got the IRDAI also, you know, releasing draft norms on health insurance. So, will the premiums increase now that the scope of coverage is wider?
So first of all, I think the draft paper that you speak about is an excellent paper, but we must remember it is still only at a draft stage. Whether it will actually get implemented and in what manner it will get implemented will decide the course. Clearly, in terms of expanding the coverage or making it more clearer as to what kind of expenses are claimable and what are not. I think the draft paper veers towards what kind of expenses are claimable and what are not. I think to a great extent it will remove the issues that plague the health insurance policies today. As you probably know, I think the disputes relating to claims is the second largest. After real estate, the courts are clogged with insurance claim disputes, and I think papers like this, if they are actually made effective and also implemented effectively, should see a reduction in those disputes, a substantial reduction in those disputes.
Okay. Hi, Mr. Rungta. Good afternoon. Sumera here. So there are four. What are these rules? What would they mean for people who have pre-existing illnesses? Would their chance of perhaps getting a cover increase?
So the paper itself does not talk about the chances increasing, but what it does clearly is it clearly lays down as to what are the for people with pre-existing disease, maximum waiting period for everything to be covered is 4 years. The company can have less than 4 years, but it cannot have more than 4 years. It also defines the paper. I mean, it's only a proposal at this stage. The paper also defines pre-existing disease, and that is extremely important. I'll just give you an example. Now, if you have diabetes or blood pressure, and I think that we are talking of some 5 to 6% of India's population. That is, I mean, India is known as the diabetes capital of the world. Now, if you have diabetes, you are predisposed to heart disease. But does having diabetes mean that heart disease is a pre-existing disease? I think this paper makes it clear that diabetes is diabetes, and only its direct consequences will be treated as pre-existing. Any subsequent disease to which you might become predisposed because of this disease will not count as a pre-existing disease. Now, pre-existing is a big source of dispute, and I think if implemented in the spirit in which this paper has come out, I think we will see those disputes reducing. But to answer your question, Sumaira, I am not sure whether this will increase availability of insurance to people with pre-existing diseases. In fact, reverse might happen. People might actually stop taking people who are suffering, the insurance companies might stop offering insurance to people with pre-existing disease. That is probably possible.
All right, Mr. Rungta, I was looking through the standard exclusions, the 14 standard exclusions that we have: pre-existing diseases, waiting period for a specified disease procedure, breach of law with criminal intent, and so forth. So does this mean that any condition other than these 14 standard exclusions that we have can be covered?
In fact, one great thing that this paper has done, we used to have a huge list of what are called permanent exclusions. For example, you could have had a policy for 20 years, and yet if you suffered from let us say any HIV or AIDS or any sexually transmitted disease, even 20 years after you had taken a policy, it was a part of permanent exclusion. Now it is very clear. Any disease contracted after you have taken the policy cannot be excluded except if it is a part of this 14 that you have just named. And a lot of things fall out because of that. One was the sexually transmitted disease. Other are congenital diseases. I mean, earlier congenital diseases were, congenital means you're born with that. Now you may not be aware that you are born with a certain defect, and you became aware for the first time after the policy was taken, but yet it was permanently excluded. Now that is very clear that that cannot be permanently excluded. Ventilator costs. There is big problem about getting claims on ventilator cost, what they call artificial life maintenance. I think there is more clarity on that after this draft paper has come out. So in many ways, I think streamlining this list of permanent exclusions, pruning it down to a manageable list of 14, tightly defining them, means that people will be far more confident about getting claims when they do get a insurance policy.
All right, Mr. Rungta, stay on with us. We'll